Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, my goodness. Last week was a fabulous episode. I felt like one of our best ever and very curious what we've got in store. I believe, Michael, we've hit a bit of a milestone mark with with this particular episode today.
Yeah, we've had a couple of milestones, and this is another fairly significant one. Well, hello to you, Jackie, of course, and a big hello to all of our listeners. Um, um, yeah, the milestone that Jackie's referring to, everyone, is that I mentioned to her this is podcast 30, so we're three-quarters of the way through our um, planned 40 podcasts for this the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. So. Yeah, for those of you in particular that are still hanging in and listening and enjoying and getting something out of these programs, very, very hearty congratulations to you. It's a tough journey, and I'd be quite certain that a number of people have dropped off. But we can't be too concerned about that. There's only so much that some people or any people can handle, and if they're pulled out, well, there's reasons for it. But Jackie, you and I, in doing these podcasts, we continue on, and our main concerns for the listeners that are still with us and still showing a keen interest.
And we have a beautiful group. I know that we do. It's so lovely and heartening to hear messages from those of you that share from time to time. And I haven't looked for a few weeks, but I can see the back end numbers. So yes, confident we've got a group with us watching, and it's really lovely to share.
Yeah.
Michael,
Well,
I have to say, I'm very curious because last week was such a fabulous topic, and we had so much enlivened conversation. I'm waiting. Like, what have we got in store for us today?
oh, we'll see. You're building up your expectations, Jackie, and it's like, sometimes when people say, "Oh, I've had a good meditation," and they expect the next one to be good in inverted commas. That was a good session, so I hope the next one's a good session. The reason you thought that was a good session, and it was a beautiful session, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure many others did as well. But from your personal aspect, the reason was that it on two or three sort of aspects of the teachings in the Gunas particularly resonated with you, and they struck a chord and piqued your interest, and it's been sort of, some of them were answers that information that you just wanted a bit more clarity for yourself, and you got that, so that makes you feel better. And we do some, in all these aspects, people attending my group sessions, they'll go 2 or 3 weeks, everything's sort of going all right, and then one day one of them will pipe up and, "Oh, that went right through me when you said that. I felt it go, right inside." So it just comes when it comes, and when the person's ready. But anyway, Jackie, that leads me into the start today. You're making those comments is that before I actually get onto the topic, chapter 15. You raised a question last week, or query, whatever you want to call it, about, can't remember exactly, but and I said I'd show a diagram in this podcast. It was to do with the transmigration, or the transference of the soul from one embodiment to the next. You remember,
Mm-hmm.
you weren't quite sure how that worked or what the process was. So I'll just show.
I have an idea of that. I really was trying to check whether my idea that I've understood for a reasonable period of time matched what you were saying. So that
Yeah,
was more the clarification, and,
all
and
right.
it's aligned.
Yeah, well, fine. Well, and others would have as well. So just to clear it up, it'll only take a few minutes. I'll show one of the diagrams in my book. It's not my diagram. It's one that I photocopied out of a Gita. Um, uh, but it might help everyone. Certainly, the ones that are watching it won't help the ones who are listening. But it shows where am I looking at here? Um, this part here. So it shows an embryo in the womb. Yeah, can you see that, Jackie? And yeah,
Yes.
it's the best I can
Well,
sort
it's
of
not
do.
super clear, but we're
Yeah,
grateful
yeah,
for your
yeah.
explanation
And
that that's what it
yeah,
is.
and then it goes through the person's life cycle. So the embryo is born, a little baby, a little toddler, a young child, a teenager, early manhood or womanhood, 20s, 30s, middle age, 40s and 50s and 60s, and then old age. And then it shows at the end that the being falls, like dies, and is lying there as a skeleton at there. But it's this part here in the centre, a little spark there, or a blob of light for those that are listening, and then that transfers across into an embryo. And then that process of baby, childhood, adulthood, old age, and then the being drops. And then it goes across and into the embryo there. And these are the continuous cycles of birth and death, cycles of birth and death, cycles of birth and death. Now, this part here in between is what's continuum, the continuous aspect of the being. This is your nature or your personality. That doesn't die, Jackie, when the body dies. It's only the body that dies. Your nature and the personality of every human being continues into the next lifetime, and it's carried over by the soul. So that's the soul there. And it's like carrying a little briefcase, or, I'll call it a USB stick or a memory stick or a computer program. So everything about Jackie, everything about me, everything about all our listeners, everything about all 8 billion people on the planet, this is happening. Whether they understand it, want to understand it, disbelieve it, doesn't matter. That's what's understanding. The great masters tell us this, and we can eventually come to recognize it within ourselves. So this is not possible for listeners, and that for medical people and scientists to discover or see or focus on, like your DNA or those sorts of aspects. There's nothing there. It's above anything that microscopes or scientists or medical researchers or anyone can ascertain. Does that help a bit, Jackie, with understanding? It's just simply called the life cycles. It's part of a major part of God's creation, and it continuously at play. And so all the material, including particularly today's and the rest of these sessions, are talking about that soul there that I was showing, our individual soul, finishing its task with the humans, going round and round in circles, because the humans have decided, I don't want to keep going round and round in circles, and I want to go back home and unify with my source. All right. So eventually, when that happens, when the individual and the material today is going to centre on that very, very clearly and very strongly, when that happens, it brings to an end those life cycles. So there's a purpose in the whole creation, which, when we don't know it, Jackie and listeners, means we're just stumbling around in the dark. We're just, this is nice. I like to do this. I think I'll go on a holiday. I'll change jobs. I'll change my husband or wife. I'll do this. I'm getting a bit bored here. Try something else. Constant changing. Well, eventually everyone will tire of that. Might take 1,000 embodiments, 5,000 embodiments, 100,000 embodiments. Doesn't matter. You'll eventually tire of it, and you'll want some rest, a permanent rest. You'll want the peace and the bliss of your true nature. So that's the whole aim of all of this teaching, even though it might seem, as you said once before, a bridge too far or a lamppost too far. That's the end. In amongst it, we just keep on going. Everyone has to have the cycles, Jackie. You can't. God doesn't stop them. He'll just keep giving you cycles. The only way you can stop them is each individual has to say to themselves, I don't want any more cycles. And you can't just sit there and say one day, oh, I'm sick of all this, I don't want any more cycles. It's a bit more involved in that. But you've got to work diligently, like we're all doing, seekers of truth, to understand it all, make sense of it all, and then make a intuitive decision via our higher self, our third eye, which is the part of us that is the only part of us that's capable of discriminating the truth from the untruth. And that's what I'd put to you, or everyone that's listening to this podcast, yourself included, is aiming for, not striving for.
I was going to say, I still feel you and I have a bit of a gap here, not just personally between the two of us. I feel like a large proportion of our listeners are interested in the long-term concept, like eager to learn and understand more about it, but simply looking to make everyday life better. How can
Yeah.
life be more enjoyable, more peaceful? I could be wrong. That's my feeling of our listener base.
No, I think I'm pretty sure you're right. But all the people that I've ever worked with over 30 years start at that point or halfway through that point. But they all keep going because they know there's more. And it's not I've got to get up in the morning, like you said, and I'm aiming for self-realization. No one's ever going to get anywhere doing that. That's just all doing, and it's all egoic and all sorts of stuff. Um, um, I'm just like because I'm teaching, we're studying the Gita. It's a fundamental aspect of the Gita. The whole Gita is about a person, ordinary Joe Blow, Mary or Joe or Billy, waking up like Arjuna did in chapter 1 and saying life's too hard for me, too difficult, or whatever, uncomfortable, or it's uncertain. You can describe it in 8 billion ways for 8 billion people, but they all have started having question marks about me and my life, one way or another. And once that happens, well, then the search for the truth continues. And it's gradual baby steps at the start, stand up and take more stronger steps. Then it becomes a jog, and then it becomes a marathon. And it's a long race, and it's a long way to go, but what's at the end of it. So that's just applying to everyone that's started listening and has dropped out and continue listening and still going. I know I get a bit excited about that in part, and I stress it a bit more eagerly, but that's all right. I'm hoping that some of that infectious sort of aspect brushes off onto other people.
Yes,
Sure it will to some extent or other. And
that's right.
sometimes, often it's not immediate, Jackie, you and everyone listening, but it's like a seed gets planted. And this guy was pretty strong on this, and you start thinking as your life goes on, I wonder why he was so strong on it. Maybe I better have another look at it. So you and a lot of your friends and that, you've still got another 30, 40 years of life. So I won't be around I'll be around, I'll be looking down, but um, saying, oh, there's Jackie. She seems to be striving a little bit more strongly.
Oh, there's that word again. Anyway, what topic do we have in store today? I am
Okay,
genuinely keen to know.
I better get on with it because I've got a huge amount to get through, Jackie. I was starting to wax lyrical there. So, Jackie and everyone, in today's 30th podcast, we begin part 1 of chapter 15, titled Devotion to the Supreme Self, or It's the Gateway to the Soul, and the two really link together. In the previous chapter, we looked closely at the three gunas, the three universal forces and energies, known as Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Oh, I can still hear those people all saying them out loud at the end, Jackie. It was such a lovely sound. Um, and the need to transcend them if we seek unity. So spend a lot of time talking about what they are and how we eventually need that they're our moods, our energies all through our life, and how eventually we need to rise above them because that's all part of our mortal aspect. So in this chapter, finally we get to it, Jackie, Lord Sri Krishna continues to explain to Arjuna in minute detail the Supreme Being, the Infinite Spirit, in all its implications. To a greater understanding here will help the seeker arrive at that state and eventually get a glimpse of it. So I just want to do a quick reminder to everyone here, Jackie, that Arjuna's representing all 8 billion people on the planet. I've stressed that a number of times, but it's worthwhile every now and again to just remind everyone. So it's not a story about Krishna teaching Arjuna. It's a story about a great teacher teaching us as individuals that are listening to this material. Arjuna's woken up when we started in chapter 1 and is on his spiritual journey. He's seeking answers to countless questions that keep cropping up for him, such as who am I, what's the purpose of life, what happens when I die. A great work like the Bhagavad Gita gradually answers all his questions and removes all his doubts and uncertainties. And I'm sure that's happening, I've seen that that's happening for you, Jackie, and I know it's happening for everyone to some extent or other. It teaches that an omniscient, omnipotent and omnipresent energy referred to by many names, such as Spirit, God the Father, Absolute, Lord Brahman, Purusha, and in this chapter, the Supreme Self. So again, I've stressed many times, Jackie, don't get worried if I say God or Lord Brahman or this or that. Whatever name you like for the highest aspect that you know, just instantly put there in that place where whatever word I've said, and Bob's your uncle. Everything's all right. People just got to not be scared, people. There's many names for the Lord or for God or for the Absolute. So don't be frightened by that. And this great energy brings about a creation which we call Prakriti in this teaching, with its myriads of forms, creatures and human beings. As humans made in the image of God, that's in the Christian teaching, God made man in his image. And this teaching's got exactly the same. We have a spark of that divinity within us called the soul. And eventually we yearn, not strive, Jackie, but we yearn to merge the two. The purpose of our life is to come to a clear understanding of this by studying teachings such as these. Anything you'd like to add there, Jackie, before I continue on?
No, you keep going.
Okay. Jack Hawley, in the book you advertised, the little Gita, sums it up beautifully in his Gita. He says, the one who grasps this great secret will become enlightened. All duties and missions in life and the goal of millions of years of human evolution will have been achieved. So that's that notion that that's our job. That's the only job we've been asked to do by God. Recognise who he is, recognise who we are, and merge the two together. All right? Sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's not quite that simple.
But it's a beautiful, simple sentiment.
Yes, yes.
Easy enough to grasp, even if the path towards that feels a challenge and
yes,
people aren't necessarily sure how. Very beautiful sentiment.
Very nicely put. It's a beautiful sentiment, and it's made to be a challenge. God makes it, he doesn't believe in kumbaya, compassion, free lunch, or just, or hug and hold hands and everything will be nice. No, he says, if you want to find me, if you want to know who I truly am, well, you've got to put in a pretty good effort, a lot of determination, a lot of perseverance, a lot of courage. So, all right, so Jackie and listeners, we continue on with this task, with that task in this podcast, this aspect of the unity. In summary, part 1 describes how Brahman manifests as the macrocosm and microcosm, together constituting the perishable, which is known as Kshara. And in next week's podcast, part 2 of chapter 15, we'll explore the imperishable, the Akshara. So today we're focusing more on the perishable, that's us, and the whole creation. And he uses, there's a lovely analogy in the teaching, which I'll get to, that helps us understand this sort of concept. And it ties in with your reference a while back when we're talking about the tapestry, the gunas with threads, and how you said, oh, that reminds you of, well, that's exactly what it is. The threads, these 3 gunas, that's why they've been put a whole chapter on those. They're very important. And this tree that's referred to is another analogy of a tapestry, but I'll explain that as I go. So Krishna tells Arjuna how he will use an analogy to help him understand his most exalted nature and the highest goal of all, reaching my dwelling place, my abode. It's referred to, going home, any of those references. In verse 1, so at the very start of chapter 15, he says, sages speak of the immutable Ashpata tree, the tree of life, with its taproot above and its branches below. And on this tree grow the scriptures. Seeing their source, one knows their essence. So he's saying part of this tapestry, there's the scriptures in there as well. Yeah. So this tree of life, the mythical Ashvata tree, is portrayed as an ancient upside-down fig tree or the sacred pipal or bo tree. So in different books they're referred to as different trees, but the fig tree is the usual one, meaning it's huge because it's a big tree, but also the fruit. So the branches hanging down are the fruit of everyone's existence. This is me and my life. You like this, you don't like that, you want to go there, you don't want to go there. All of those dualities are the fruits of this tree. So this tree of so I've read that, sorry. So its roots extending deep into the pure being, that's into the consciousness. Remember, it's an upside down tree, so the roots are going up, are upwards, where God is, or the absolute, and the branches is Prakriti, the whole creation. Its roots extending deep into the pure being, hanging downwards, its branches and leaves, constantly shivering, always in movement, firmly rooted in the mud below. That's Prakriti, the whole creation. This whole phenomenal universe, matter, energy, mind, represented by its ever-spreading canopy of leaves. So the literal meaning of Ashvata, all words have got a literal meaning that you'd look up in dictionaries in that. It is beautiful. It says that which is not today as it was yesterday. That which is not today as it was yesterday. So it gives giving us a clear indication of change, isn't it? Constantly changing, the Shashvata tree, our lives, the creation, everything's constantly moving, everything constantly changing. And I'll expand on that as we go now, as we continue on. So in this sense of not today what it was yesterday, it alludes to the mundane world of transitoriness and all of its beings which are ever in the process of change. You've had a lot of changes in your 50 years of your life, Jackie. I've had even more changes in my 80 years of my life. Yesterday, we were talking at the start that it's windy and cloudy up at your place, and yesterday it was such a beautiful sunny day. In one day, you can have 4 seasons in here in Victoria, can't you? So the beautiful sunny blue sky. Next minute, it clouds over. Temperature starts to drop. You're reaching for a jumper or a coat or something like that. All just constantly changing. And that's happening all over the world. Nothing remaining the same from the present moment to the next. It refers specifically to the creative principle of Prakriti, nourished by the constant changing gunas at work in the threefold body of man, his physical, subtle, and his causal. So the main changes we're obviously interested in, Jackie, in this work are the changes that are occurring within us as individuals. The weather's interesting and politics is interesting, and what's happening in Nicole Kidman's life and Keith, that's all interesting. But it's all changing, all changing, constantly changing. So this is constantly binding people to one action after another. This illusory world of Maya is constantly changing like a river. It appears to be the same river. So if you live near a river or you go camping there or something, oh, there's the river. Last year it was, there's all the gum trees and rocks and waterfalls. The river, yeah, it's a river. It's always the same. But yeah, the river might be the same. The surroundings might be the same, but the water flowing is constantly different. So if you're standing on a bridge and you're looking down at the flow of the water, what you've just seen then, you're never going to see again. It's flowing past, and what's coming in you can't see until you're looking down and it's down there. So same with our lives. We've got our past life, whatever's happened in our life. We can say, oh yeah, got photos and memories, that and that. What's happening next, we don't know. We've got projections. We'd like this to happen, or we'd like, working for all this and all that sort of stuff, but we don't know for sure. So there's only one moment that's relevant to anyone, and we all know that. It's the present moment. Lovely saying, the past is history and the future's a mystery. So that's how it all works. So the river appears the same each day, but it's not. It's not the same water. There's a constant, continuous changing flow. And I've got a quick diagram I'll show in my book as well while I've got it here, Jackie. It's this one here called Me and My World, or Me and My Life. In other words, me and my tapestry, me and my tree of life is in the material today. And so there's me here constantly changing. Little baby here, or embryo, baby growing up and whatever, to where you are now. In there's all your desires, expectations, your likes, your dislikes. This is for 8 billion people. And then there's my life. It's like the river. You can see I've got a river here. Yeah. And these two are constantly changing. And in that change, you're trying to do something permanent. It's like building a 40-story skyscraper on quicksand. There's no solid basis there. And you look across at this part of the diagram, and that shows the divine self. Consciousness never changes, pure, perfect, never born, never dies. And that's the part of us. That's our two natures, the immortal and the mortal. So we're looking at all of this constantly changing, understanding that it's constantly changing, so therefore it's not real. The only thing that's real is something that never changes. And so we're changing our focus. We don't just throw all that away. You're still going to live your life. You're still going to go to parties and go to restaurants and go on a holiday, all of those things. You don't throw them away. But you put more emphasis on here, which makes more meaning and peace. You were saying just a few minutes ago, most people are just looking to settle this part here. Well, you can't settle that unless you know a bit more about this, because then you're taking the peace and the bliss from this part of your being and transferring it over, controlling that part of your being. Is that making sense?
Mm. It's just that lovely reminder, isn't it, to connect with and find the consciousness, the alignment that's within, and trying to live each day in the movement of each day and the changeability of each day while you're connected to the source of your truth and the source of consciousness.
Yeah, beautifully put, Jackie. Yeah, lovely. That sums it up very nicely. So I was going to say, I've written in here anything here, Jackie, and I didn't even have to say that. You knew when to come in.
Oh,
Well,
I just pipe in when something presents.
yeah,
Surely you
lovely.
know that about me now.
Yeah. Well, in case you didn't, I just wrote, giving you a chance there, giving me a sort of a break on me for a couple of seconds. All right, so the question arises now, listeners, Jackie and you, everyone. So how does one escape this tree of worldly life? Krishna advised Arjuna to cut down this deeply rooted tree with the sharp axe of detachment, of renunciation. Now, we spent a whole chapter on renunciation, didn't we, Jackie, earlier on? We looked at selfless action. We looked at being in the now. We looked at renunciation. We looked at when you let go, what's not true, you become wiser. So all of those steps, now they're all coming together to sort of make more sense of what it is we're talking about. So that diagram I've just showed of the illusionary, everything in transition there, needs to be cut down, but not killed or dismissed or thrown away, but through detachment or renunciation. Disassociate it from yourself and saying, that's me, and that's the most important thing in my life. Now, I know it's subtle, but people will eventually need to understand that very, very clearly. So he says, when you renouncing more, letting go, being detached or not attached, he says then begins the process of liberation. This is how you free yourself from that bondage of all that I was showing on that diagram into that other realm. But you continue existing with the two together. You can't separate them and just say, oh, I don't want this lifetime anymore. I want to be devoted. Well, that doesn't happen. You have got a lifetime. You've got a body. You've got a mind. You've got emotions. So it's all a matter of bringing them under control and getting the proper priorities for all of our compartments. So seeking that, so he says, then one begins the process of liberation, tracing our way back to the source, seeking the first cause, which is Purusha, from which the universe, Prakriti, came long ago. So in similar vein, each individual seeker needs to cut themselves free from their destructive karmic samsara tree by the same means. So we've got two trees I'm talking about here, Jackie. The universal tree of life, or the Ashvata tree. But that's the big tapestry that you spoke of. So that's the tapestry of the whole creation, Prakriti. In that tapestry, 8 billion people have all got a little portion of it, which is their little individual tapestry. And that's called the samsara tree, sometimes sanskara, ikara meaning karma. And that eventually has to be burnt down, the burning of your sanskara. That's all your egoic USB stick is referred to as being burnt. So we need to free ourselves firstly from God's or the universal Ashvata tree, which is an illusion. It's the canopy that's hanging down. So none of that's real. And in that tapestry, in that canopy of leaves, we've got our individual leaf, yours, mine, your children, our grandchildren, and so on. And they're all weaving their tapestry of life. And eventually we'll weave into our tapestry of life and escape out of there into the unity. All right. This isn't too difficult, is it, Jackie?
Well, I think it will be challenging some of our listeners, but
Oh
that's
yeah.
okay.
I'm here to challenge. I'm here to
Yes.
challenge
Oh, yeah.
folks.
I know you enjoy the challenge.
No, not enjoy the challenge. I'm here to challenge people.
Yes, yes. Well, and I think you enjoy it as well.
Oh yeah. Well, because I know ultimately, even if they can't meet the challenge at the moment, Jackie, they will, and they'll thank me for it somewhere down the track. Because if you stay where you are, well, then you'll stay where you are. It's that notion: if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always do what you've always done. Yeah, that's that aspect of Einstein's saying. So people wouldn't be listening, Jackie. You wouldn't be interested in this if you didn't want to be moving, evolving higher. What speed everyone does it doesn't worry me in the least. Yeah, we all do it at whatever speed we want to. There's neither good nor bad. It's just all that any person by their personality is capable of. But all I keep saying is reminding everyone there's a little spot a bit higher than where you are. Just see if you can get to that next, like a rung of a ladder. I'm not worrying about if you when you get to it, you'll get to it. That's not my concern. My concern is just to help you get from this rung onto that rung. And if I've done that in this 40 podcasts, I'll feel very happy with myself. And this is how I look at students that are in the groups over the years. Just go. So the last 2 years, well, they've gone up one rung. I'm very happy for them. They're happy. They just needed to go up one rung, and that's it. Others that are still with me after nearly 20 years, they've gone up 3 or 4 rungs. Yeah. And they feel better for it and they love it and so on. So we all measure it by what we're getting out of it and what the feedback is for us as an individual. So those two trees, the Ashvata tree is, as I say, the big tapestry, and our Sanskara tree is the individual part of that tapestry. So it's all part of the one tapestry, but you've got your little section on it. I've got my little section, and all of it makes up the whole tapestry of the creation. And God puts his in the stars and the moons and the changing weather and birds and bees and all the rest of it. So. And then when we eventually succeed in chopping down these two mythical and illusory trees, the trees of Maya, lies the path from which, when found, there's no return. So the more we get rid of what's not really us, the more we see what really is us. Okay, and this is the primal God from whence this ancient creation has sprung. So Krishna says here nicely, when free of ego, not deluded by pride, free from selfish attachments and selfish desires, beyond the duality of pleasure and pain, ever aware of the higher self, the wise go forward to the light of the supreme goal. Neither the sun, the moon, the star, the flash of lightning, nor fire lit on earth can shine in my celestial home. God says that none of those lights, they're just reflections of my light that I allow to operate in the creation. And so he says, it is my unseen light that appears in the borrowed lights of creations that I've just referred to, the sun, the moon, star, and so on. He says the bound soul is man, and the freed soul is Ashwara, meaning God itself, consciousness. So when you're bound by your by the Ashvata tree, the tapestry, the world of Maya, you're a bound soul. When you remove yourself from that, well, then you're what's called the liberated soul, the freed soul. And once we achieve that, folk, he or she's forever with me and is never restored to a separate existence. That's that aspect of unity. And all that happens while we're alive, while we've got children and families and jobs and all the rest of it. All
There's
right,
something
Jackie?
so beautiful in the simplicity of that, isn't there? Because I think at times some of the complexity of notions in spiritual teachings, people might be intellectually interested, but sometimes it can be a bit of a stretch too far if it's complex. But in what you just said there, the simplicity, I think everyone can relate to that. No one wants that feeling of being bound, of being tight, restricted, constricted, all of the different words we could use. But everybody has a notion, some sort of notion of freedom and truth and alignment and moving forward in an
Yes,
unhindered way.
yes,
And regardless of our level of comprehension of spiritual texts, we all have some interpretation, some known and felt sense of that.
yes.
And it's inviting. It's a very inviting proposition.
Yep, yep. No, beautifully put, 100% correct. Couldn't agree more. Um, Like everyone that's listening to these podcasts, Jackie, including yourself, same with all the people I've ever spoken to in groups and so on. I say the same words, and there could be 10 people or 20 or 50 or whatever, but everyone hears them differently according to where they are on their spiritual journey, how much they've read, how much they've studied, how closer they are, in the number of lifetimes they've had working in this. So no two people ever hear exactly what I'm saying. Everyone hears the same words, but not everyone hears it differently in interpreting the meaning of what I'm saying. And so I understand that. All teachers understand that. If they don't, well, they're not very good teachers. But that doesn't mean anything from my perspective. It just means whoever's getting whatever they're getting out of these podcasts, for example, I'm delighted for them. I'm not expecting everyone to fully understand every word I say or reference I make. The ones who understand it more deeply the way I'm intending it to be understood, well, that's lovely. The ones who half, that's lovely, or three-quarter or quarter. If you're listening, as I said at the start, I'll congratulate you. I love you. You're keen seekers of truth, and you're all doing your best. So, everyone's an individual, Jackie. I understand all that, and there's no problem with that. All right, well, I'll finish off last page, so it's all going nicely. So on entering the sea, everyone understands rivers entering the sea. So it's an analogy always used in these teachings. On entering the sea, a river gets merged in it. After a while, when it goes out, you see the murkiness, leaves and stuff. The Amazon, they reckon for about 200 kilometres as it's going in through the ocean, you can still see the river, even though it's left the land. But eventually the darkness gets watered down, and eventually you can't see the remnants of the Amazon River. It's all you see is the ocean. So that's what it's like with human beings. On entering the sea, a river gets merged in it. Likewise, when realization comes, the Jivatman, that's the individual seeker, merges his individuality in the Paramatman, that's the Supreme Self or Brahman or God. So we're now an individual soul. When we understand fully, well, it's like the river merging into an ocean, and then there's no individual river anymore. There's no Amazon River. It's just part of the ocean. So then eventually when it happens for you, Jackie, or me, or any of our listeners, there'll be no Jackie or Michael or the listeners. Will just be Paramatman, the great Atman. This awareness as pure consciousness is referred to as the supreme state. It is infinite and immovable. It neither dies nor is born. It is unaffected by time, space, and causation. The Jivatman, who identifies himself with this absolute consciousness, gains mukti, which is known as enlightenment or self-realization. He does not individualize himself anymore, and thus ending his life cycles. Thus the man who has escaped from Maya into cosmic consciousness is filled with supreme bliss, at one with spirit, his immutable self. So in summary, Jackie and listeners, what we've covered in great detail in this podcast, and there's been a huge amount in there, is both describing our dual nature, our mortal self as part of the tree of life, this tapestry that you've referred to a few times, Jackie, which is the perishable manifestation in this work called Prakriti, or the creation, as we know it probably more clearly. And our immortal self, our higher self, which emanates from the imperishable Lord, which is known here as Purusha, or consciousness, or God, or whatever it might be. So the exercise, Jackie, for you and the listeners, those interested, is a contemplative, reflective self-assessment sort of activity this time. I've done that before, but it's to look at your dual nature. The two wolves that you shared very early in the piece, in the stories, your divine nature and your mortal nature. And just for example, when I say that, so you want to be still and quiet, when you've got a few 5-10 minutes. Don't get into lengthy discussions, but just simple questions, that I'll run past you. Can you see more clearly now these two aspects in you, the two natures? Are you becoming more determined to be less mortal and more divine? Do you sort of sense some sort of wanting to transition a bit more from one to the other? Are you more convinced now that you're heading in the right direction as you've been listening to these podcasts and getting some new knowledge? All of those sorts of questions that might arise for you or have been there, just reflect on them, think about them, ponder on them, and I'm very, very confident you're going to give me a lot of positive answers next week. All right, Jackie, I'm done and dusted. Any final comments you'd like to make?
Excellent. I'm still not entirely convinced that the majority of our listener base is excited to being less mortal, but I definitely agree with you that I feel certain, a growing sense of enthusiasm of understanding truth and consciousness within, and how that matches with truth and consciousness as universal.
That's what I mean by being less mortal, Jackie.
I wonder if people will make it interpret that as being prepared to give up this life, and I don't think a lot of people want to do that. A lot of people are enjoying their life, even if it does have pain and challenge.
I don't want anyone to do that. I'm not asking people to do that, Jackie. I'm just asking them to switch their focus a little bit. That's all.
I think you might have said less mortal, though. Or do you mean focus on their mortality less?
Yes.
Okay.
Focus. Yeah, focus. Yeah.
Lucky we clarified that bit.
Well, I'm glad you clarified for yourself. Because I keep saying, Jackie, nothing changes in our life except that we have greater control over it, because we're pushing it. Well, let me put it this way, which I think will be very simple for you and everyone. Less focus on the egoic aspect of your being that's been constantly running your life, and more faith and trust in the higher aspect of your being, your intuitive nature, to be using that more and wanting to use that more, so that you operate in your mortal life happily and more happily and more usefully to you and your family and work colleagues and everyone in the creation. Is that
beautiful? Yeah, that's better. That's more to my liking.
Okay. All right.
And I think it's more digestible for a lot of the
Yes.
people
Yeah.
listening. It's
Yeah.
a nice concept because, I mean, we are here living this mortal life. We are here with our bodies, our families, our jobs, our circumstances, all of that. I think it often just comes back to this recurring thought is that people are looking generally for more peace, more happiness, more joy, more connectedness and integration within themselves, more connectedness and integration with those around. And for me personally, I can't help but be reminded again of this sentiment that as we understand our own truth more strongly, as we continually connect in with the part of ourselves that's true and real, then as we go about our daily life, because we're practicing doing that for ourselves internally, it becomes easier, I think, without even turning it into a learning exercise, that as you're engaging with other people, you start to look to connect with the point of light, the point of consciousness, the point of truth within them, so that then it becomes multifaceted. It's not just your own internal integration and connection with the immortal. You're starting to connect with the truth and the real resonance in others, which actually just starts to enrich life. It enrich your relationships, or even in just little exchanges with people. You're bypassing the mortality, you're bypassing the ego, you're bypassing the impermanence of their form, you're connecting with what's true and real. And that, for me personally, makes life very rich. It's a lovely ongoing learning journey that every day I can wake up and, just seek to continually integrate internally and continually seek to find that point of truth in others moving through life. So yeah,
Well,
that's just what your words reminded me of in the wrap up there.
well, that's good. You've sort of spoiled the exercise for everyone, Jackie, because it's like artificial intelligence. They've just Googled you, and they're writing in or answering the questions I've posed to them. That, that's exactly it, Jackie. You've just answered the questions that I posed as the exercise for the week. You've just answered, as one individual out of all the people who are listening. Um, um, you've reflected on it, and you've obviously been doing it all through the podcast as of others. It's not a sudden thing, but it was just, I thought, an opportune time with the material to sort of put the spotlight back on that, on this activity. But that's exactly it. Just, as I said it myself at the end of it, can you see that your life's changing because of the new knowledge that you're picking up and the efforts you're making to, I could have just gone straight to when I said two natures, said, well, one's your egoic nature and one's your godly nature or your divine nature. That was all I was really referring to, Jackie, that can you see, and you're saying clearly that you can see. Yeah. So, and I know that all the people listening are saying the same thing. It was just the exercise to just focus on it.
Mm. No, it's a beautiful exercise. I mean,
So
don't we all need it time and time again?
yeah,
Because
yeah. So,
knowing it is one thing, doing it on a consistent basis is another. It's almost like I sort of visualize it like this lovely line of internal connectedness. But how many times in life we kind of deviate a little bit, and then you're like, oh, I went over here, I got distracted, I got caught up with something, come back to center. Oh, something else happened. Out here I go again, fragmentation, non-alignment, non-connectedness. Back I come.
yeah,
This is life. I think we all understand that. So it's
yeah,
it's living with this experiment, if you like,
yeah,
living with this
yeah,
exercise
yeah.
on a daily basis, day after day
Well,
after day.
yeah. Again, that's just another way. So we've sort of said it about 6 ways now. Um, when I said focus more on the divine life, well, I'm meaning that. Can you see that you're not focusing on these others? Because you say, well, yeah, I can see the other, but I want to bring it back. Or if I go this way, I want to bring it back. So that's what the exercise really is. And just while we're on that, Jackie, that's the whole notion behind the Christian teachings of um, God's will, thy will be done, not my will. So when my will's all over the place, I'm chasing this and I want into that and I don't like that. Well, there's God's will, and I'm not lining up with it. If when I start to learn not to fluctuate all over the place, so gradually the fluctuations get less and less, and more they line up. So my will and thy will line up together, And then that's the same as unity or mukti or self-realization or enlightenment, or God the Son returning, the prodigal son returning back home to the Father. They're all same story, just told in different language, in different cultures or religions or so on. All right.
Beautiful. Lovely. Well, thank you very much. A lovely session. Happy homework, everybody. Happy life practicing of these teachings, integrating it into daily life. Thanks for your time, and we will see you next week.
Okay. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you,
Bye.
listeners. Bye.